Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we're just getting in all our reading today, and thought we'd give you a view out the window. This is the building opposite, in case you didn't figure that out. And yeah, I can't really see it. Anyway,
There's no need to move the camera
no need
about.
to move the camera about.
You know, it took him ages just to get... Anyway. We're starting a new chapter, and I have a book.
And she finally got her book back. So,
I like reading from books. Let us know. Leave a comment if you prefer to read from a book and hold it and smell it and everything. Or no, I ain't finished, have I? Or a device. It's got to talk all the
very
time.
divisive.
Yeah. Anyway, chapter 5, canto 4.
5?
Oh. Because you interrupted me.
No, I didn't.
Canto 4, chapter 25, text 1. The descriptions of the characteristics of King Puranjan.
Oh, this is the whole chapter is about King Puranjan.
I would have thought the clue was in the chapter, yeah. It's about King Puranjan, yeah. It's not...
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Alright, text 1. The great sage Maitreya continues speaking to Vidura. My dear Vidura, in this way Lord Shiva instructed the sons of King Barhishat. The sons of the king also worship Lord Shiva with great devotion and respect. Finally, Lord Shiva became invisible to the princes. This chapter contains a great lesson concerning the monarchical kingdom in the days of yore. When King Bahishit was Shat. King Bahishit was considering retiring.
Glad you got that book in your hand. It's making a big difference.
Was considering retiring from the royal duties. He sent his sons to perform austerities in order to become perfect kings for the welfare of the citizens. At the same time, King Bahishat was being instructed by the great sage Narada about the material world and the living entity who wants to enjoy it. It is therefore very clear how the kings and princes were trained to take charge of a kingdom. Welfare activities for the benefit of the citizens were aimed at understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The human form of life is especially meant for understanding God, our relationship with Him, and our activities in His service. Because the kings took charge of the spiritual education of the citizens, both the king and the citizens were happy in Krishna consciousness. In this regard, we should remember that the monarchical hierarchy of Prachina Bahishat comes from Maharaj Dhruva, a great devotee of the Lord and the most celebrated disciple of Narada Muni. King Prachini
Right? Prachina Barhishat.
Right. King Prachina Bahishat was then too much engaged in fruitive activities due to performing different types of yagyas. One can actually be promoted to higher planetary systems or to the heavenly kingdoms by performing various yagyas, but there is no question of liberation or going back home, back to Godhead. When the great sage Narada saw that a descendant of Maharaj Dhruva was being misled by fruitive activities, Narada took compassion upon him and personally came to instruct him about the ultimate benediction of life, Bhakti Yoga. How Narada Muni indirectly introduced the Bhakti Yoga system to King Prachina Bahishat is very interestingly described in this 25th chapter. Phew! So,
what an introduction.
King Bahishat was being instructed by the sages. Wait. And King Bahishat sent his sons. Where's his sons?
The purports.
Oh.
We just read the whole pastime about it.
Problem,
Of the book.
There's too many names.
The problem. This is the problem. We read Bhagavatam. I mean, you know, people watch movies, they watch soap operas, they remember all these unimportant names.
You know, that's so true, right?
We're talking about King Prachina Barhishat. He's a great king coming in the lineage of Dhruva Maharaj, and he had how many sons? 10. 10 sons. Yeah, there was 10 sons, and they performed. He sent them out, and they found Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva began to instruct them, and those prayers that we just finished, and he where we left off, he was encouraging them to perform austerity and chant those prayers. They're going to go underwater and perform austerities and chant those prayers, and then we're going to come back to that in the last 2 chapters of this canto. But now, what we're finding out is what happened after King Prachina Barhishat, after he sent his sons away. This is what's happening now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So Narada Muni recognizes that here's this great descendant of Dhruva Maharaj, but he's absorbing himself in just performing yajna for the purpose of getting some benefit for himself, some personal benefit. So Narada Muni is like, no, we have to save him. We have to help him.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Anything you wanted to put in from the purport that you read?
Well, I was interrupted. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But it's true, right? Like, we could absorb ourselves in making, like, say, timelines or lists, because we do absorb ourselves in other nonsense. I remember the very first, going back in the day when I first came to the temple, and there's a Back to Godhead, and there was this young girl. I don't obviously have it, sadly. Young woman, I'd say. Anyway, in her home, like pretty much the length of her wall, she had created a not a timeline, but like she started reading the Bhagavatam, and she was so fascinated, and as she was reading, it starts Krishna, I guess, and then it was like how it was all this, then that king, and then that one, and it was massive, and she'd created against her whole wall. It was really impressive. Young lady. I don't even know what country she was from, but they did an article on her in the Back to God magazine, and it was one of the first things that I read, and I was like, that's so interesting. It just seems, and that's how she was absorbing herself, and for her, therefore, she really clicked, and it really got it, because especially because it's visual, but she was interested to do that. And in comparison, yesterday something popped up on my social media feed, random, because those of you who are in the UK anyway will know what EastEnders is. I mean, random. I used to watch that religiously when I was in the UK, but when I was studying. And then 20 years later, they're bringing back this character. Clearly she needs work. I think she does need work. But anyway, they're bringing back this character, and it's so interesting. I was like, what character 20 years later? And I knew exactly who she'd been. The family hierarchy and the relationships. Oh, damn, I was like, oh, right, he's bringing so-and-so back. Oh, it's interesting. Like that. And I was also impressed the program's still running. It is, but yeah, so it's interesting, isn't it? And then you kind of like reading and think, well, there's too many names here. No.
There are an exceptional number of names in the Bhagavatam, that's for sure.
Yeah, but how many
times? Someone has 1,000 children or 10 children.
No, true, but certain names and certain lineages, like we've had classes, and it's not like you're just reading it, and so it's interesting. Does it pop out to you, and is it like, is it familiar? For me, it was just a lesson. Yeah, I need to just keep hearing more. That's the point, because I need to wipe out the EastEnders stuff that's still in the hard drive somewhere there, and I don't need that popping up at the crucial moment. All right. Is that it?
No, I hope not.
All right, text 2.
Yeah, it's my turn to read.
Your turn.
It's my turn. You had your turn.
Oh, you already spoke. Okay.
So, text 2. All the Pracheta princes simply stood in the water for 10,000 years and recited the prayers given to them by Lord Shiva. Okay, this is intense. 10 princes chanting in the water for 10,000 years. Wow. Of course, in the modern age, we may be amazed how the princes could stand in the water for 10,000 years. However, living within air or living within water is the same process. One simply has to learn how to do it. The aquatics live within water for their whole lifespan. Certain favorable conditions are created to enable them to live within water. In those days, however, people used to live for 100,000 years. So this is in Satya Yuga. Out of so many years, if one could spare 10,000 years for the sake of austerity, he would be assured success in the future, in his future life. This was not very astonishing. Although such a feat is impossible in this age, it was quite possible in Satya Yuga. Hare Krishna. So, an interesting thing, and I remember hearing these times and spans of life and thinking, come on. But then, if you think about it, like, if you have a dog, 1 year of a dog is equal to 7 years of a human. So, like, my parents' dog is like, how, 22?
It is 14 years old.
Oh, 14. Yeah, so 14 times 7, 82 is like 92 years old.
It's really old though, it is, isn't it?
94. No, 14 times 7, 8.
It's old. It's old though.
98 years old.
It's got white hair and everything.
14. Yeah, 28. So, so that's for a 14-year-old, but if a 14-year-old human, it looks like a 98-year-old, we're going to be like, that's weird. And then if you think about the lifespan of a fly or an insect or a bug, some of them come into existence in the morning and they're dead by the end of the day. But for them, that's an entire lifetime. So, our experience of time is quite relative, but we're understanding that these are humans. They're not like higher demigod. Of course, Lord Shiva is a demigod. But these are exalted persons, but they're living in the earthly realm. So it just means at different times, people lived a lot longer, which is ironic because in the modern day, people may proclaim that actually now we've progressed, with modern technology, with medicine, and people live longer now than they used to. But, according to Bhagavatam, that's not actually the case. And this whole idea that, you just have to learn the science of how to stay in water. And, there are these people who do these deep dives. They get on a rope and they go down. And they don't take tanks, and they just, and they just like, they do these like breathing techniques, and they learn how to store air in their body so they can keep going.
Yogi.
Yes. And I remember when I was growing up that there was this program called That's Incredible. And they used to have all these weird things. And one thing that I was always attracted by was when they would have a yogi on the program. And one time they had a box that was like, literally this big, and this yogi was like 6'5" or 6'7", almost 7 foot. And he crawled inside of that box, racked his legs around his head, and then they closed the box.
Oh, my Lord.
And he started, you could see that his breathing like covered the inside, and then he stayed in there for the whole program, which was like an hour long. Then they opened it up and he crawled out, and everyone's like, what? And they're like, this is like a sealed box. It's like you shouldn't be able to live in there. So all these kind of weird things.
Why did they put him in there? Because
he chose to do it. I'm sure they paid him an immense amount of money. Why a yogi would want any, I mean, maybe they didn't pay him anything. I don't know. But anyway, the point being that there's so many things that we can probably do. Athletes perform great feats and break records doing, because they train and they practice doing it. So all these things become possible with high levels of practice, I guess. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, because in terms of, you said athletes and these, and it's like, it's the mind just as much as it's the physical. You know, your mind can give up quick, sooner than the body. And you can be, because the mind is like, if you're running, whatever, I don't want to do that long, or I don't. But the body's, if you can conquer the mind, which is ironically the whole point when you're reading the Bhagavad Gita and all these teachings that get, control the mind and senses, and, there's no telling what you can do.
Yeah. It's like fasting days.
Yeah.
It's like, oh God, it's just the mind.
Yeah.
Otherwise, once you cross over a certain barrier, you can go for days without eating,
Well,
months,
yeah,
actually.
because, like, I don't go for days, but as you know, like, if I can remain, they say, altar clean or pujari clean, which means not going to the bathroom or
eating anything,
drinking water, literally from the Mangal Arati to the time we come home in the evening. But it's interesting, lately anyway, since, one gets into their twilight years and stuff, and then when there's a fasting or this, just the concept on the word fasting, you're like, I don't know about that, at least the water has to be there, whatever. Otherwise, I can come home and in a day be like, oh, I'm still altar clean. Oh, So it's the mind, isn't it?
It is. Mind over matter, as a
Yeah.
matter of fact.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, everyone, thank you very much for tuning in. Please read the Srimad Bhagavatam. Please absorb yourself spiritually. And don't forget to like,
Subscribe,
share.
comment.
Haribol!
Haribol.